So the attempt is to apply the same goal, not just on a state-nation-based apparatus, right? Not just within the confines of any particular nation or any particular state. The idea is to implement this global social demography, to be technical, this global homogeneous social demography on the totality of the globe, right? So that the entire globe, everybody within the globe, all around the globe, espouses the same beliefs, acts the same, functions the same as what Jose Ortega y Gasset would call a mass man, right? So this person wants to make sure that if there's anybody anywhere in the globe, right, anybody anywhere in the globe who looks like, captures, espouses a different ideological belief than the ruling party or the ruling individual, you know, this is why Cobra Commander is my favorite character of all time, because Cobra really believed, you know, that he could rule the world. It's one thing to have a cartoon character say that he can rule the world. It's a whole other thing to create an ideology, to erect an individual, and that individual is going to rule the world. And it's his law, it's his beliefs, it's his practices, it's his ideology that's going to be enforced across the entire globe. And individuals who do not believe, well, where are you going to there's no way to purge this individual. There's no other state. You can talk about purgation. This transition is known as purgation. You can talk about purgation of an individual from within the confines of a state to another state when we're talking about national or nation-based genocidal accounts and so on. When we're talking about terrorism to the point where we're talking about world domination, there's nowhere else for this individual to go. So what we have to do is we have to exterminate all these individuals. All of these people have to die. So this is genocide on its most conceptually largest scale, which is why I believe that there is a lot of overlap between the ideological concepts of terrorism and the ideological concepts of genocide, because both terrorism and genocide share this exclusionary ideology. I said in the last video in my conference that I'm going to have this year, I want to hear graduate students and what they have to say about the similarities and differences between genocide and terrorism, and that's what's going to be the focus of this year's conference. And you know, I want to know the new young minds, the fresh ideas, because I'm already started getting regimented and old in my thinking. I want to hear what the young kids have to say. But the point is, anytime we're talking about an exclusionary ideology, the whole goal of an exclusionary ideology is to erect a homogeneous, a similar population of people with similar minds, similar practices, similar faiths, similar cultural. It can even get to the point of similar linguistic. It doesn't usually get that extreme, but it can even get to the point where everybody speaks the same language and so on and so on, right? The problem, however, with this idea of a homogeneous state of affairs is this idea of heterogeneity is natural, right? Heterogeneous population is a natural state of affairs, right? Biologically, scientifically, practical, natural, right? The migration of human beings in order to maximize their ability to utilize resources. I hate the word interbreeding, it's so disgusting, but the interbreeding of races, the intermixing of races. All of these practices, the intermixing of marriages and interfaith marriages. I've written fictionally about a Christian man marrying a Muslim woman, and so on, right? The intermixing, mixing up, getting everything, sharing ideas, you know, information exchange, all of this is a natural product of our biology, right? Our biology doesn't make this distinction, it's we socially construct these distinctions. Biologically speaking, it's all fair game. So heterogeneous population is the natural state of affairs, right? It's the natural dispersion of what I classify in the book that I'm publishing right now, which I classify as the unique demographic identifiers. I'm not going to get into that now. It's the natural dispersion of these identifiers throughout the population. What ends up happening is when we're talking about the creation of a homogeneous society, the ability to try and take what's natural and what occurs naturally within society and force the creation of sort of domination, oppression, subordination, we move from a state of affairs that's natural to a state of affairs that's unnatural. Right? We move from a state of affairs where we have a natural dispersion of demographic identifiers throughout the social demography, to a state of affairs where we're enforcing an unnatural state of affairs. I mean, Adolf Hitler wrote about this in Mein Kampf, right? And during my dissertation, I remember getting a question and I answered it and I referred to the text. And somewhere in the text, Adolf Hitler says something like, it was like a providence type response. He was the arm of the universe, he was the arm of God, or something to that effect, and that it was like sort of this perverse social Darwinian theory that nature imposes harsh conditions in order to better this, a diversity of species. So too has nature given him the power to impose unnatural conditions on the human species in order to, get rid of the weaker set, survival of the fittest in its most perverse sense, and elevate, the Aryan race and, all that crap. It's the same idea, right? But instead of talking about Aryan supremacy, we're talking about an ideological tyranny, right? The ideological tyrannist says it's my way or the highway. There's no other way to do it, right? It's my ideology, and that ideology dominates, that religious practice dominates, that social practice dominates, that legal practice dominates, gender-based practice dominates. Everything else is not open for discussion. The point is that it's unnatural. People are naturally going to want to behave and act in a less repressed, in a far less repressed, regimented circumstance, and to impose this homogeneous society where it would otherwise be heterogeneous, to undermine the natural demography of society, which is mixed, and to try and impose a homogeneous demography through this global attempt to enforce an ideology on the globe. It's ridiculous. It's unnatural. It's not sustainable. It is doomed and bound, definitely, categorically, to fail. It will fail from the beginning. It cannot win. The point is, people believe that it can win, and they're going to do everything that they can in order to impose this global ideology of tyranny, and that's where the battle begins, right? This is where the ideological battle begins. And as I said before, I'm not a soldier on the battlefield, but I can do my part, and academics can and should be doing their part to contribute to the global discussion of the ideological warfare, right? Because insofar as we recognize that there is, and it is, and I've discussed this earlier, an ideological war, as well as a brains and a brawn war, then we need to contribute our brains. I need to put all of my learning and education into helping fight this war, right? Because, there is a need for brains to contribute. What we recognize then is that we can exploit this exclusionary ideology, right? Since part of the terrorist ideology, since the ideology of tyranny is it's self-contingent on, and this is undeniable, an exclusionary ideology, then since there are ways of attacking exclusionary ideologies, which is what I spent 3 or 4 years studying, the weaknesses in exclusionary ideologies, you can apply the very same tactics to undermine the power or the strength of exclusionary ideologies to undermining the ideology of tyranny. So on the bottom of page 30, number 1A, homogeneous societies are fundamentally impossible to attain or maintain, right? Adolf Hitler tried to attain it, can't happen. Even if you were conceivably able to attain a homogeneous population, an enforced homogeneous population, it would be impossible to maintain, because people like me and other people who will not cower in the face of an abuse of power, I'm going to believe what I'm going to believe, and I'm not going to have anyone force me to believe otherwise, right? You will always have members, segments of the population who will rebel against the establishment, for good or for bad. And insofar as they rebel against the establishment, it will be a perpetual cycle of violence. It has to be inherently a perpetual cycle of violence, because what ends up happening is the individual, we'll call them, I like Gassette's term, right? The mass man will, within the population, always try to enforce his power, his will, on the will of the people, and there will always be those who are different. There will always be those who rebel. So insofar as this individual is targeted for extermination and slaughtered, well, others might